Hello, everyone and everything, and welcome back to more Hollow Knight. In the last episode, we completed the Hunter's Journal, and now it is time for us to return to Godhome. Hallownest. This kingdom is blessed with true gods, true, all around the corpses of pretender gods, but not in Hallownest. When last we left Godhome, we had done almost everything we could possibly do here, and were met with an odd wall, a barrier of sorts that we could not pass up at the very top of things. And we had no choice but to leave and try and find the key to such a barrier, and we found just that in the Void Heart. Now, when we approach this Pantheon, we gain the ability not to challenge it, not to enter, but to ascend. The Pantheon of Hallownest. Prepare your favorite combat charm build, because this is exactly what you think it is. Gather your thoughts. I will be doing this with no bindings. And God help you if you decide you want bindings. Because the Pantheon of Hallownest contains every single boss we have ever fought. Don't panic upon seeing the double Vengefly King, though. These are not exactly their Ascended forms. They are a weird mix of both their Ascended and Attuned forms for every single boss that has a distinct difference in Ascended. It's weird starting off against Vengefly King because the Vengefly King is such a unique case, gaining the second boss. The only thing that doesn't change for the new fights in the Pantheon of the Hallownest are HP values and damage values. So, it's weird. The second Vengefly King that is summoned still has 430 HP, but the original doesn't have the increased HP from his Ascended fight. It still only has 450. Regardless, he's still relatively simple. No changes to the arena, and that takes care of him. The Gruz Mother, of course, has her Ascended arena as well, but her attuned HP value of 650, leaving her relatively simple all the same. But having these slight changes in difficulty from having either less ground to work with, having extra or different enemies, ouch, it makes for very unique experiences ahead of us, and a very harrowing one as well. This is our first fight of the ones we've gone over so far that has no changes from his Ascended form from his Attuned form, since the Ascended forms are completely unaltered up here. And this guy remains one of the easiest fights that we can possibly do, what with his insane susceptibility to the Abyss Shriek. Ouch. Be very aware of some of the changes we're going to be going over. They are going to be pretty important down the line. So far they've been negligible, but we're going to continue our way up and get through it. But definitely not against this guy. Now, while we're going up against some of the much easier ones, now would be a good time to one final time talk about what it is we're even really doing here in Godhome. So, we'll have many questions for sure. Godhome is weird and mysterious, and is going to leave more questions than answers in a lot of ways. Like, who the heck locked the God Seeker in a cocoon? Why does something like the Moss Charger count as a god when something like the Gorgeous Husks or the Pale Champion or the Pale Lurker doesn't? These are not some of the questions that the game will ever answer for us. But what I do want to talk about is what exactly Ascension means. It's what the God Seekers are trying to do. They have the ability, perhaps some form of even technology or magic, to attune with gods of the land. What counts as a god is, like I said, unclear. But in the simplest terms, it is a powerful being. Whether that be by their training, by their unnatural properties, or some such.
Mischief beyond mischief, we cannot escape thee, even in this highest, most distant of pantheons. O wielder of mail, O eater of soul, are thee a messenger of the gods, or something stranger? We will not defy thee. Continue thy combat. We shall be listening closely. O gods of Hallownest, show us your might. We shall attune ourselves to thee and ascend ever higher.
Gorb has his new battlefield. Or his ascended battlefield, I should say, but his attuned HP, only 650. The reduced maneuverability of these three platforms still makes Gorb a relatively strong threat. But, small mercies, the reduced HP of many of these enemies is going to make them far easier than their ascended forms, not to mention the fact that none of them deal double damage. So, as I was saying, what the heck does ascending mean? What is it that these god seekers are even doing? They're a sort of hive mind that seeks out strong foes, and by ascending with them, nice voice crack, and by ascending with them, they allow the gods to become even stronger. We've seen in the Hunter's Journal that they have certain prayers to the gods at the top of each pantheon. Gods which we have not been able to fight in the overworld, gods who have diminished themselves or become weakened in some way. Again, mysteries keep piling up, but what is sure is that ascending is in some way a way to find the true power of many of these gods. The Soul Warrior is an interesting case, because he had the interesting difference in his ascended fight of summoning these follies. Note that these follies have 13 HP exactly, so even if you are doing a nail-bound challenge, these will still fall in one hit. And so your strategy here should not call for anything different than actually fighting him on his ascended form. Or on his... yeah, that's what I meant. That's what I said. And that's all for him. They also said... oh, hello, Tizo! Oh. Well, that was Tizo. He had a cameo, and that's just going to raise more questions. Let's just ignore it for now. Except to say that perhaps this gave us a hint as to how he met his end in the arena. The Trial of the Fool had a brooding Moloch of its own. So maybe the brooding Moloch was what got the best of him. Rest well, Tizo. You did okay. Interestingly, as we've gone about our way through the pantheons here, we have gained respect of the God-Seekers. They saw us as little more than a speck, a cringer when we began, and now they see some sort of godly property to us. Not sure exactly what the implications of that are yet, but if watching these gods do combat makes them more powerful, perhaps the same is true of us. Hard to tell. But one can't be sure one way or the other. Maybe we are attuning ourselves as we go about our way. And that's really as specific as I can get with the tidbits that they've given us. Because again, they have been extremely mysterious their whole way through. But we make it to our first hot spring, our first of many. We are about a quarter of the way up, having fought every enemy from the Pantheon of the Masters. And by being so diligent by doing the binding challenges on the earlier Pantheons, we have access to 5 full Lifeblood masks through here, which is going to make a number of things significantly easier, such as the fight against Zero despite his ascended form. I was about to say, I highly recommend taking things more cautiously from this point on, because the increased masks are a great boon to us, and if we do make it from one hot spring to another, we can actually get more than 5. If we were to keep all 5 on our way to the next spring, we could actually build up to 10, and so on and so forth, which is pretty significant, but don't be too complacent. Against Zero there, I highly recommend saving your spell for his second phase, and finishing that off quickly. Begone with you, simple things! Now we have gone over all of these bosses in such detail, having beaten them without getting hit time and time again. We have every tool we need to fully ascend this Pantheon, but it is going to be a long trial. That was rude, Mr. Soul Master, Mr. Master. Yeah, oh, alright, you know, that was fine. I'm completely whiffed my nail art, but we're okay, doing well so far. Now, since there are no more markings on the door of the Lifeblood room, you might reasonably wonder what purpose trying to do this challenge with bindings are. All I'll say is just leave that to later. Take on the challenge without any bindings first, and figure out if going that extra mile is something you want to do after you've gone so far. Me personally, getting each binding, even individually, not even all at once, is something I have never done. Yikes. Now, the Oblobbles is a good a good example of something that hasn't changed, even with the addition of the Ascended. On Ascended, they had identical HP, but like I said, HP values are one of the only things that don't carry over from Ascended differences, so those are identical to their attuned fight. Alright, Mantis Lords. Bring it on, my old favorite besties. Not too much different to say about these ones, but I will say that they have not lost their edge or their touch. I still love them as much as I always have. Alright, bring it on, you two. Alright, listen up. I'm the one with all the facts and figures around here, so believe me when I tell you that the Sisters of Battle, and I say this purely from an objective, mathematical standpoint, is the best boss fight in the game. They take everything that made the Mantis Lords fun and turn it up to 11. Attacks cracking off even faster, feeling like they're coming in from every direction at once, perfectly weaving through their onslaught as you trade attack for attack like some sort of lethal ballet. It is divine. On a functional level, very little has changed. The additional health of one more sister gives them more health than any other non-ascended boss fight, but the whole fight goes so rapidly you barely notice. No new attacks in their repertoire, so we once again have the Lunge, the Plunge, and the Whirlwind Slash. When it comes down to their rapid-fire lunges and plunges, there's not actually much different to be aware of compared to the original fight. For sure, they are much faster, the frequency of attacks being completely off the charts, but in terms of the skills necessary to react, evade, and counterattack, they're the same. Once again, I recommend using your dash only sparingly. Specifically, try to use it only when you've been driven to the edge of the stage and need it to get back to the center. Otherwise, small jumps and sidesteps are all you need. I also recommend using your double jump to string together nail pogos should they come at you with multiple lunges in a row, as you may not have quite enough time to touch the ground between attacks. What is new to this fight are their new trio attacks. For one, if two of them line up to use a pair of synchronized lunges, the third will always immediately follow up with a plunge. An attack which comes at you from 3 directions at once is absolutely threatening, but their simple, geometric attack patterns still make this a simple dodge. Land your nail pogo on the pair and immediately move to the side, and you'll do just fine. A similar change has been made to their double whirlwind slash, with the third always following up with a plunge. Unfortunately, this removes any safe spot this attack may have once provided to heal, and in fact, you will never get a moment to heal while all three sisters are active. Dodging this attack by sidestepping the plunge and then jumping over the projectiles is really no problem. But if you're feeling ambitious, I recommend loosing an Abyss Shriek on one of the sisters on the walls, as you'll likely hit them as well as the third sister when she appears overhead. Just be sure to dash out of the way as soon as you regain control from the spell, and be prepared for some possibly tricky maneuvering to avoid the projectiles afterwards. But that's really all that they bring to the table. Our game plan as such has not changed much, despite how much we've all improved. We're going to stay close to the center whenever we can manage it, and we're going to keep a cool head, once again bearing in mind that for all their teleportation and quick movements, they are predictable, in that they will never follow up any attack they do with anything but a jump off screen. You are 100% safe from any sister who has just performed an attack until they vanish, and so you're free to dedicate all your attention to the others. There's definitely a rhythm to this fight, but it's not something I'm sure can be taught without being experienced. If you are struggling to get a feel for their pattern for vanishing and reappearing, I recommend jumping often. Both the lunge and plunge can be dodged by responding with a jump to the side, so if you move as such every time you see one appear, you should be okay. From there, it's just a matter of getting your slashes in. Nail pogos are your safer bet for the same reasons as jumping, as long as you don't get greedy and remember to keep moving horizontally. Luckily, they spawn higher in the air if they use a plunge while you're already airborne, so double jump liberally to stay out of their reach. And that should be plenty to carry you through, at least until you fell one of the sisters and turn this back into the fight against the Mantis Lords. From there, it's all downhill. Their coordination, their partnership, is their greatest weapon. They've chosen to honor us with their full strength. It's only fair to return the favor. That's right, this game is not done throwing new bosses at us. There are more surprises in store, and oh my goodness, this fight is so freaking good, man. I love it so much. I can't get over it. These three are such an amazing foe. It feels so good to finally have that answer for us. It's like, what would happen if they all fought us at once? Although, to be fair, I would not blame you if that was not a question in the back of your mind. For many people, the original fight against the Mantis Lords is one of the largest barriers for them. You can, of course, bypass them and leave them for later, unlike some of the other fights, like Hornet. But to me, they were a challenge that I wanted to face. And they were an excruciating test of skill, but once you get it, you just get it. Farewell, ladies. Now, unlike the first 10 bosses, from now on we'll be getting a nice little break here at the hot springs every 5, which is pretty nice. Marmu has his ascended health of 416, but his has his attuned health of 416, but his ascended battlefield. Forgive me for mixing up those words all the time. Ascended and attuned are just so similar. They start and end with such similar noises or sounds. But we've just about got this. The best thing about the dreams is that their ascended fights were particularly difficult for the drastic increase they had in HP. So fighting them on their attuned form's HP makes them go by quite easy and breezy. Fluke Marm, once again. The differences in HP are the one thing that didn't carry over, and that does include the increased HP that her first batch of Fluke Marms had on her Ascended fight. These ones are as simple as one hit, no matter how little damage you're doing. Unless somehow you've made it all this way without upgrading your nail even like twice. That would be remarkable, and I props to you if that's describing you. The Broken Vessel, whose story we now know in more detail. I do want to point out that it is pretty evident that some of the kin, some of the cousins or siblings, I don't know why I called them cousins, escaped the Abyss after they were sealed in. Of course, the same is true of us, not to mention the Lost Kin and the one we saw way back when we first fought Hornet. It's not clear how they escaped, but shadows always find a way, don't they? Galleon! Another great example of a really easy time if you just blitz down their HP. He's already on his second phase, third phase, and... oop. Done. Now this is another strategy you can do is bring in the Fury of the Fallen charm. That's always an option for the Pantheons, what with having access to so much lifeblood. But I don't have the patience to play through so perfectly and avoid getting damage, even when you're doing that much more with every single hit. Not my bag, personally. To each their own. Alright, Motto should be just about over with here already. He is not a difficult boss fight, and basically just wailing on him does a lot more. I will say that after beating Radiance a couple of episodes ago, we are at no more risk to our Steel Soul run ever ending. There is basically nothing else we can do unless we go and retake on any challenges we've already done that would present us with a greater challenge that could actually end our run. We are safe from here on out, and that includes every Pantheon. Now, Hive Knight here, he is a relatively unchanged boss, but note that he does have access to all of his attacks from the get-go. He doesn't have multiple phases, as that was one of his ascended changes. But he's already over with. Onward to Elderhoot, and we are starting to get into some of the Dream Warriors who did not have changes. Galleon and Elderhoot are the only two, I believe, of the Dream Warriors that weren't changed. One other question I often think about when it comes to what counts as a god is, why isn't Revik here? She's honestly more formidable than any of the Dream Warriors, and yet she is not considered a god. A question that perhaps is best left unanswered. There are many things for which the answer will just be because gameplay. How would you include Revik in a boss rush mode? Now the Collector, his changes are significant. HP changes don't carry over, but the enemies he summons aren't the same. So their HP is still the same as it was in Ascended. They have 26 health each. This is not a big deal for us right now, since we're coming at them with fragile strength. They all still die on one hit. But definitely bear it in mind if you are doing a binding challenge of either your nail or charms, because each of these will take 2 hits to take down, and it is very easy for him to overwhelm you. For the time being, we can take this pretty comfortably. Shouldn't have too much of an issue. And I believe he is just about done already with only 900 health. That is him done. I will see you again soon, Collector. I still hold that the God Tamer would have been a much, much tougher boss if they had made it so you actually had to fight the Tamer herself while the beast was alive. I am glad they didn't, because honestly, I would have found that extremely difficult. But Team Cherry, if you're taking advice for future games, consider it. Because I know you're watching me in all my glory. You know what, Grim? You have your reduced HP. You're a tuned one. Why don't we just blitz you down in the way that I know how? I'm actually somewhat regretting not bringing in Spell Twister. I think I could have taken him down if I had that, but now we're just going to have to wait our way through all of his Firestorm attacks. No big deal. We'll take the time to reflect on our journey so far. We have done a great deal. This game has nearly 4 dozen different bosses in it, all of which we are about to go through and take on bit by bit. We're about more than halfway through that already. And this is truly what all of the practice in the Hall of Gods was leading up to. Alright, I kind of wish I hadn't tried to do this the cheesy way, because we are hurting for health now, and I would enormously appreciate not having to start over yet. But that's why I brought in Soul Catcher, not Spell Twister. It's going to allow me to do more healing and play recklessly, which is why I'm going to switch off it now that I'm actually thinking about it. Spell Twister it is, at least for now. Definitely take this opportunity to fill up on soul every single time. And we find ourselves in a new area. One we have not seen before, but we see a giant form in the background, which is vaguely familiar, if you remember a split-second sequence from many, many episodes ago.
Sleeping God, we can barely feel thy presence amongst the green left behind. What strength we once possessed fades beyond time and tune. Sleeping God, see as thou once existed, with land and dream and devotion, we would give our mind.
This is Un, basically paying homage to the fact that she is powerful enough to be here, similar to the creature which lurks beneath the lifeblood, but either hidden or not powerful enough for us to actually face. Probably for the best, she would be the largest boss in this game. Now, the Watcher Knights, still remaining one of my favorite bosses, and that is not changed a bit here. And I am already missing out on a lot of health, and that was just a solo one. I think for this instance specifically, I am most grateful that none of the enemies here have increased health like they do in their ascended forms. Because the amount of HP these guys have when you fight them, it is honestly exorbitant. And I am almost out of my lifeblood, and I'm out of my lifeblood. That was just rude. I should be more aggressive with spells. That's the best way to save yourself hits in these situations. But hindsight's 20/20, and I will never claim to be as good at this game as I can be. I definitely know what I'm doing. I know these bosses inside and out. But when it comes to the application of my own skills, there are certain things I can definitely still learn. And I think you may have noticed that over time as I fail to listen to my own advice against many of the bosses that we've faced off against. Umu! She has her, it has its ascended difficulty arena, lacking the acid below, instead being a bottomless pit. But with only 350 health, this is among the weakest foes that we will face today. And all it's going to take is probably about 2 sequences of... I missed, and oh my... Oh, goodness. Watch Umu be the one to kill me. That would honestly be hilarious. I honestly appreciate the changes to Umu a lot more than I once did. Even though she feels like... Why do I keep calling her she? She kind of gives me Radiance vibes. I think that's... Oh, goodness. I think that's why. But... like I said, I have to appreciate the changes they made. It's a fun platforming challenge trying to get the explosive enemies to work with you. And Hornet, you're early. This is not the sequence. Oh. 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 The terror of Deep Nest takes flight and becomes one of the simplest, easiest, most predictable bosses we have ever fought. This poor guy. Despite his wings, he has fallen so far. Nosk in his base form with his ascended arena could be a genuine threat due to his weird projectiles and huge skittery hitbox. But Wing Nosk feels more like the Vengefly King. He does bring a little bit more heat though, packing 4 attacks, starting with the Swoop, Summon Balloons, the Infectious Outburst, and the Infectious Drip. I wasn't kidding when I said he feels like the Vengefly King. The swoop attack is nearly a carbon copy of the Vengefly's main means of offense, sweeping across the stage from one end to the other. The main difference is the size of Nosk, and especially the odd placement of his wings. They may not look like it, but they are hitboxes, perched atop the rest of his body, and so you do need to jump pretty high to consistently clear it. You'll almost certainly need to nail pogo or double jump. Of course, you can also Shade Cloak through him, but I don't recommend making that your primary means of evasion for reasons we'll see later. The similarities to the Vengefly King don't stop with Summon Balloons, as Nos cries out and summons either 1 or 2 infected balloons into the arena. These are identical to the ones summoned in the Broken Vessel fight, having just 1 health and so dying in 1 hit, no matter what you hit them with. There can be a maximum of 6 in the arena at once, but I think it would genuinely take more effort to keep them alive that long than to just quickly dispatch them. My only real recommendation here is to hit them with your nail instead of spells, as you'll probably want the extra soul, but it's definitely up to you. The Infectious Outburst is highly similar to its form in Nosk's original fight, a series of arcing projectiles spreading out in either direction from Nosk and leaving hazardous goo wherever it lands. The biggest difference stems from Nosk's new behavior as a whole, and the fact that he will always hang out at either edge of the screen unless he's in the process of swooping. So he'll always use this attack from one edge of the screen. One consequence of this is that some of the further flung globs of goo will likely go off the top of the screen, and so be a bit harder to see coming and dodge. However, that's really only an issue if you're trying to dodge this attack by finding a safe spot between 2 globs. What you should really be doing instead is timing your Shade Cloak to ignore all the projectiles entirely. This is also why I don't recommend relying on the Shade Cloak to dodge the swoop, because Nosk will always follow up the outburst with a swoop. And if you're following my advice, your Shade Cloak will be on cooldown when he does so. So here's the ideal sequence for when he uses this pair of attacks. When you see the goo start flying, jump, then carefully time a dash through the blobs. Immediately follow that up with a double jump, and land a nail pogo on Nosk as he flies under you for good measure. Bonus points for launching a Shade Soul at him after he passes. If there's still hazards on the ground after that, you'll still have another dash and double jump to maneuver yourself to safety. At 50% health, Nosk will add the Infectious Drip into his kit, and honestly, the changes to this attack are enough to make me extremely glad for this new fight. Instead of slowly following you across the arena, this attack will drop several drops at once, spread all the way across the screen. This is probably Nosk's most threatening attack, as you only have time between when the drops start falling and when they land to find a safe spot between them. But you can always completely bypass that with a Descending Dark if you want. Nosk won't even finish this attack by falling down on top of you anymore, but instead just return to the side of the stage, posing no threat. Our game plan here is nothing fancy. Since Nosk will do his best to hover out of reach whenever he's not attacking, we'll be getting in the bulk of our damage with the 1-2 punch of landing a nail pogo as he swoops, then launching a Shade Soul after him. He's large and fast enough that your Shade Soul will likely hit him twice when you do this. You'll get much of the soul you need to sustain this strategy from the balloons he summons, and honestly, I wish there was more to it than that. But there are no other tips that I can really offer without insulting your intelligence. Winged Nosk is just that easy. So, all that's left to do now is swat this fly. Yep, our second new boss. If you were paying attention in the Hall of Gods, you will probably have noticed the absence of just a couple of names that we never found out in the overworld, and never will have found, no matter how deep and far you look. These ones can only be fought here. And it is very strange. Nosk, out of every enemy in the entire game, or Winged Nosk I should say, is the second to last boss. Nosk's name has got me flubbing my sounds. The second to last boss that you can possibly encounter. And he is one of the easiest. He does look pretty cool though. That I will definitely give him. I like the aesthetic of him having his wings. But I stand by what I said. He would absolutely be much easier if we had to fight him, or much more of a challenge, I mean, if we had to fight him in his base form with his ascended difficulty arena. That flat one can be tricky, requiring careful use of invincibility frames, but all is well there. Sly! Yeah, you were definitely, supposed to be fought after Hornet. That's, okay, you know, we're fine. Let's not question the will of the gods. Least of all Sly, who has a lot of our money. And no matter how soundly we thrash him today, he will hold on to that. For safekeeping, of course, just like Millibel. Hey, why isn't Millibel here in the Hall of Gods? She's strong enough to withstand thousands of strikes from our nail. You could call her the god of greed. Or trickery. That's something else I could definitely bring up, is that it is pretty cool that every single god is named the god of something. I believe the only exception being the Dream Warriors. Don't quote me on this. I'm not good at remembering this off the top of my head, but I think all the Dream Warriors are named the something god of dreams. Or maybe it's the dreaming god of something. I don't... They're all consistent, at least in one way. There she is! And while I don't remember most of the actual god names, I know the Vengefly King is the god of territories and stuff like that. I highly recommend taking a stroll through the God Home, or Hall of Gods, if you have time, and reading them for yourself, seeing any interesting ones that you can glean from what's down there. Alright, there she is. It's funny that they put her after Sly, as though she's the true master of the Pantheon of the Sage. Interesting implications that. I don't know if I'd take that Sly. Sly is definitely the tougher boss between them, undoubtedly, but that's not to sleep on Hornet Sentinel. She is a powerful boss in her own right. Just how quickly she comes at you. Enraged Guardian. Alright, now we're getting into the ones that do double damage. Stay frosty up here. What does that even mean? If you're frosty, if you're cold, your reactions are going to be dulled because, like, your blood is flowing slower to your body. You can't move your limbs as fast. So what does that mean, stay frosty? I have never thought about that before just now. Hello, Lost Kin. Lost Kin has something interesting that I can talk about now. If we ever dream nail them... there it is. We get the ... which is distinctly different from what happens if we try and dream nail the Pure Vessel or the Hollow Knight, where just nothing happens. It's sort of interesting. The idea that these creatures are thinking of silence is enough of a distinction that this could have been one of the siblings that actually managed to climb their way to the top and was deemed unworthy of being the empty vessel. That's just speculation on my part, but it is fun to think about nonetheless. Okay, No Ice, this is one fight that I'm glad I'm coming in with full soul, because I want to just deal with you as fast as I can conceivably do so. Where even are you? You're down there. Alright, get out of here. I don't hate this fight, it's just dull. There's not a whole lot going on. It's almost exclusively platforming skills. It doesn't feel like you're actually dodging her attacks. It feels like they're just there, since they're completely disassociated from her own actions and her own doing. But I suppose in lore, her chanting is agitating them to come after us. Traitor Lord. Another old friend of ours. This has absolutely nothing to do with what we're doing at all, but one of my favorite modded bosses, this game has, as I've mentioned before, a healthy modding community that likes to add changes to the game, skins, new bosses, and one of my favorite bosses is combining this with the Sisters of Battle, so you fight all 4 Mantis Lords at once. That's a really cool idea in universe, and a pretty neat idea for a boss fight that I would never be bold enough to try for myself, because that is a whole lot going on. But again, cool that people thought of that. I don't know why I always do this. I know you are immune to that. Go ahead and just curl up for me so I can bounce you to the end of your fight. One of our most fought bosses. I am eager to get you done and dusted with, Mr. White Defender. Even though you did teach us a lot of really cool things about the other champions. Hey, speaking of which, why aren't they gods? Technically, you could make an argument for Hegemol. But Isma, Zamir, the last one whose name always escapes me, Drya, that was it, okay. Yeah, where are they? Oh hey, I actually made it through with some extra lifeblood cores. I don't usually manage that, but now we have an extra 7, almost double our health. That's pretty cool. Again, don't sit on the bench if you have lifeblood masks. It will reset them and not reset the cocoon. Ooh. Now that does look familiar.
Oh, tragedy! This majestic god invades our attunement with such ease. We live only to serve the gods, to seek them out. Why does she frustrate us? How does she hide from us? Does she diminish herself by choice? Hail, Mother, we barely dare to think. The chance of meeting is too rare to thine residence. Could you be one of them?
And she's still speaking in riddles. This is the chamber of the White Lady, who willingly bound herself and it seems that doing so hid her from the Godseekers enough that she does not have to participate in this rite. Soul Tyrant, we are definitely getting up there as far as difficulty goes, but this should still remain no challenge for us. We have done everything here time and time and time again. All it takes now is applying our skills. I'm hoping I can make it through here without losing too many masks. That would be pretty helpful for the trials ahead, because as experienced as I am, well, there goes that. There are a great many things that I still am not 100% certain of as far as my skill goes. But we'll keep at it. We have nearly crested this peak. And yikes, alright. Just don't fake me out and we should be just fine, Mr. Tyrant, sir. Okay, and that's just about got you dusted. Something I definitely appreciate about this fight, compared to his original fight, the Soul Master, is that he doesn't do his whole warpin' thing. That's exactly the sound he makes too. You can play it back on the recording. It will match up 100% accurately. Yikes! Oh, I know what I'm doing, and I'm risking it anyway. Like I said, I don't have the patience to play these things perfectly. It is a lot of bosses back to back to back. We have been at this for approximately half an hour, and Markoth, whose ascended boss fight is one of my least favorite due to this crazy annoying... Oh, shoot. Due to this really annoying battlefield of his. But small mercies again. He does have his reduced health at only 650 instead of having his more than any other. And he did take away all of our lifeblood, and you know what? He's a worthy one to do so. Grey Prince Zote. Oh, excellent. Grey Prince Zote is a unique case. He doesn't have anything different from his Ascended boss fight that we would have to deal with here, but he is unique in the fact that he is the only boss fight in this entire game, apart from, I suppose, the train of thought, don't leave me. I just have to concentrate so hard on these things. Apart from the Mantis Lords and regular Nosk, that we would not have to fight in this Pantheon, given our choices. As I said back when we were doing his bio, there is one way you can avoid having to ever fight him, and that includes in this case right here. Please don't kill me. Please don't kill me. Oh my goodness. And that would be if you abandoned him way back in Green Path, you would not have to deal with him here. And that is an absolutely valid strategy to take. I have known people who have reset the game to go back and do that exact thing just so they didn't have to deal with him here, because he is among the more difficult bosses to take down. Unlike the failed champion, whose tremendous damage is formidable, but once we get him down to his first stagger state, he's already done for, thanks to the exploits that we have exploited many a time. And I'm going to do so once more right now. It is very threatening putting him right after Grey Prince Zote. That is a mean thing to do. There have been times where this is the fight that did me in after I barely scraped by Grey Prince Zote. But now that we've gotten him to this point, we are already done here. Let me just take one more little bit batch from you, Mr. I'm braver than all of you. We know that's not true. Okay, and now we go over here and just dispatch him quick as can be. There are only a couple of bosses in this whole Pantheon that can be dream-nailed after you've defeated them. Hegemol, why did I call him Hegemol? Failed Champion, False Knight, and Sly, and perhaps Hornet, I think, are the only ones. I could be wrong. There could be one or two others, but there aren't many bosses that we don't flat out just kill. Actually, technically, this is one of the ones that we do kill. But his armor still persists with his thoughts. I'm going to assume that he's just imbued his thoughts into them so thoroughly that that's the case. And, oh, here we go. The only boss that can be fought in the overworld, but never has to be fought in one of the other 4 pantheons, Nightmare King Grimm. This is his attuned form, which is a little bit weaker than his overworld form, ouch. Having only 1250 HP. Still a very difficult fight in his own right. Do not get complacent here. I deliberately chose not to practice this fight down in the Pantheon of the Gods, not really for difficulty reasons, but just because of time. I knew going in that this was going to be a very, very long trial that awaits us, but I am personally confident enough in my skills against this particular foe that I didn't see it necessary. But if you want to add his Radiant fight to your repertoire, or at least his Ascended fight to your repertoire, you will find that that would be a very good idea. Ow, shoot. Don't hit me again. Okay, we're good. And I'm still being very gutsy with the Shade Souls through that Firestorm, which is an enormous risk, honestly. One I need not take, but it's just fun to do. It's fun to take risks. Why are we even here if not to challenge ourselves? To take on the greatest trials that this world has to offer. So risk myself I shall. Yikes. Now, I'm actually going to pause after this fight here, because I'm very curious about what Nightmare King Grimm's dream dialogue is. Troopmaster Grimm has unique dialogue for the god, for up here in the Pantheons. I'm wondering if the same holds true of the Nightmare King. He does! Interesting. Alright, originally, his regular battle, which I was never gutsy enough to try, is Heart of Flame, In Dreams, Born Anew, and Power, Fear. But here, it's gods, bound by ritual. Deepest power, the heart. Scattered lands, nightmare binds all. Perhaps the Grimm troop managed to find their way to the original home of the Godseekers. Maybe that's why he remembers him. Perhaps when Troopmaster Grimm says an honor seeker to attend your call, he's saying so with familiarity. Perhaps he's attended this trial before. Definitely an interesting thought. Alright, bear in mind, this is our final stop, our final hot spring. Prepare yourself however you feel you need to. Only a few trials remain. We've seen that throne once before.
Even long departed, we feel the afterglow of the god power that sat this throne. It lays heavy upon this kingdom. That lingering power alone was beacon enough to draw us to Hallownest. How bright it must have been to mortal bugs stood before it. A god so strong, yet erased so completely. How could it happen? God King, you reduce your form to match our name yourselves. But why shed so majestic a whole? Surely your true immensity could have inspired devotion all the more.
So this is the chamber of the Pale King, who has vanished so completely from Hallownest proper that he is spared from this challenge as well. Our brother in arms. The last and greatest foe that we have fought here in Godhome. Bring it on, pure vessel. Now it has, I will be honest, it has been a little while since I practiced any of these bosses. I have not done so since before many of the videos that you guys may have already seen. So I am going to be concentrating a fair bit as we go through here, because this is no longer second nature. But it shouldn't be too much of a trial regardless. We have done this to the height of his ability. All it's going to take is one last time putting those skills into practice. The last boss that we had fought. And that will put us through every single fight that we have fought so far in a row. And that does it. Or does it truly? Let's do this. One final time. Absolute Radiance is the greatest challenge Hollow Knight has to offer. The Radiance in her base form was a trial in and of herself, but now we see that an age of being trapped within the vessel dulled her power, her light. So now we have the privilege of facing her at her undiminished best, the blinding peak of her power. To say that Absolute Radiance is simply the Radiance but faster would be accurate, but it would be a grave disservice to the devious ways in which she's improved. One of the most apparent changes is the addition of a 6th phase. Her first 4 are all comparable to how they functioned in the original fight, each with 50 more HP than before. However, Phase 5 now ends as soon as you reach the top of the ascent, transitioning into Phase 6 without any need for you to hit her. Phase 6, the last resort, consists of only one attack, her new Orb Barrage, as she teleports around this arena composed of only 2 small platforms. You can be sure that the tension is tangible. Additionally, she has a unique property in that she cannot be defeated by anything but a strike from your nail. This was also true of the original fight, but it's much more pressing now that she has more than 1 HP up here. She can still be damaged by spells until she has 1 hit remaining, but she cannot be reduced below 1 HP by anything but your nail. But we'll go over all that in more detail when we talk about the Orb Barrage. Speaking of, all of the attacks we know have returned, each more dangerous than before. She has the Solar Beams, Sun Orbs, Sword Spiral, Sword Flurry, Sword Fall, Wall of Light, Beam Assault, and as mentioned, Orb Barrage. Look no further than the Solar Beams to see just what makes this fight so much more challenging than before. For all of Radiance's tricks, the one thing we could count on was her relatively generous telegraphs. No matter how many crazy attacks were on screen, you could at least see them coming well enough to get your feet under you. Not so here. The new and improved Solar Beams become dangerous a mere instant after their positions are shown. Like before, the second and third sets of beams will always fire at different orientations than the preceding set, so as long as you stand where a beam just was, you'll be safe. But as far as the first set goes, there's no trick, no subtle tell, you will just have to react. You may consider using Sprint Master just to give yourself that extra split second of grace. The Sun Orbs are cruelly fast, approximately double the speed they were before, and even better at cornering. Worse yet, the Radiance will now choose, at random, whether to summon 3 or 4 of them in a row. You'll have to stay sharp to make sure the 4th one never catches you off guard. Never assume there will only be 3. However, despite their greater stats, our strategy of evading them by jumping up, nail pogoing on the Radiance, and falling down feels more consistent with these orbs than it did with the slower ones. The exact reasons that might be are beyond me. Perhaps, given their incredibly tight turning radius, they don't swing around quite as much and are ultimately more predictable for it? Hard to say for sure. Regardless, don't forget about our backup plan in Descending Dark, especially if you can also rid the battlefield of the floor spikes while you're at it. Sword Spiral has probably received the most significant improvement of all her attacks, as they are summoned and launched far faster, and have gained a second wave to follow the first. This second wave will always be oriented exactly between the first, covering significantly more ground overall. Luckily, the second wave will always curve in the same direction as the first, so essentially, dodging it is very similar to dodging the later waves of Solar Beams. Simply stand somewhere where a sword from the first wave was, and you'll be safe. The biggest threat this change poses is once again in the 4th phase. As before, the initial summoning of the swords can be an extremely fast and dangerous hitbox if you are directly next to her on one of these platforms. Just as we did the first time, we're going to defuse this situation by ground pounding if she ever appears directly over us, but now you have to use your invincibility frames to position yourself between the second wave of swords as well. Absolute Radiance's Sword Flurry and Sword Fall attacks don't have anything new to them mechanically. They simply move much faster and spawn at quicker intervals. Though you should absolutely note that, while in the original fight there were always 4 waves of swords in the first 2 phases, now it's a tiny bit different. She will still always summon 4 waves of vertical swords when using Sword Fall, but she will only ever summon 3 horizontal waves with Sword Flurry. Don't let that trip you up. As before, Swordfall is her only attack in Phase 3. The intervals between swords are even shorter than they were in Phases 1 and 2, but otherwise there's not too much to say here, other than to once again urge you to resist the temptation to use spells on her during this phase. Swordfall remains the only attack she stops using after Phase 3, and Sword Flurry still only comes 2 waves at a time in Phase 4. The Wall of Light has probably changed the least out of all of her attacks, simply receiving a large increase to its speed. I will mention that you should probably be playing with enough volume that you can hear this attack coming. That shouldn't be a problem as it's quite loud, and impossible to confuse for any other sound effect, but every precaution helps. That brings us back to the Ascent, and her Beam Assault is, at the very least, not as wide of a hitbox as it used to be, but it is dramatically more rapid. Unlike before, you can't reasonably wait and jump between each beam fired. You'll have to brave them as you platform. The beams will switch from targeting the area around you to targeting you more directly at approximately the point you reach this platform, about halfway up the climb. Your strategy for climbing the first half should be to jump straight up, only moving horizontally while a beam is in place, to cover distance as quickly as possible. This is a preventative measure to keep you from jumping directly into a beam. And if a beam should happen to target you while you're jumping straight up, dash immediately, then recover and resume the pattern. After the beams switch to targeting you, you'll want to move left and right as much as possible as you jump, in order to draw the fire away from the platforms, giving you a clear path up. Finally, at the top, she begins her orb barrage. These orbs are more comparable to those from her original fight, being slower than the ones we dealt with down below, and they have one special property that will be our saving grace. They despawn when they go off screen. I don't know what merciful deity made that the case, but it is something that we are going to abuse to high heaven. One final time, we are going to abuse our key to a long life and happiness, nail pogos. Stay over top of Radiance and string together your nail pogos using both your dash and double jump, and you will barely have to pay attention to the onslaught of orbs, as their natural trajectories carry them safely off screen and out of our lives. Don't bother with anything else. Your final strike is mere seconds away. Our game plan is going to be significantly more cautious than that of our original Radiance fight. While in the first two phases, anytime she appears, give her a moment to begin an attack before charging in. If you strike first and ask questions later, you'll most likely be taking a sword spiral or solar beam to the face, as their telegraphs have been so significantly reduced. Phase 4 is the kicker. You will have to be extremely patient here, biding your time until she appears in an area that is convenient and uses an attack that is also convenient. The extra space you have to maneuver up here is your friend, especially against the sun orbs. Once again, our base of operations is going to be this top central platform. The 4 sweet spots she can appear are directly above this one, this one, this one, and this one. If she does appear there, use a descending dark to get right next to her, bypassing whatever she throws at you, and then unleash hell on her with slashes and abyss shrieks. If she appears anywhere else, just dodge carefully and take your time. Incidentally, these 2 side platforms can be easily reached from the top platform by dashing from the edge of it and using a descending dark. If I'm being honest, the true heart of this fight's difficulty isn't absolute radiance. It's the pressure. It's the entire Pantheon of Hallownest lying beneath you, and the looming threat of having to do it all again if the fight proves too much. The best thing you can do to alleviate that strain is pause and step away. Take a breath and know that it doesn't matter if she wins. You are relentless. No matter how strong she is, as long as you are willing to give it just one more shot, she can never truly triumph. You are the Void. You are the Hollow Knight. You didn't think she'd miss out on this party, did you? How better to end the greatest sequence of challenges with one final incredible test of our skill. And one last time, I have to praise this. So many games out there consider it a reward to deprive you of one last challenge if you go out of your way to do everything, to complete everything, to prove your skills. And then they refuse to test it at the end. It just feels like it falls flat, but not the case here. This is a celebration of every skill that you have attained, every trial that you've overcome. And we can do this. The Void meets us even here. Though we are more alone than we once were. There's no presence. Oh gosh, there's no presence of the pure vessel here. No siblings. And yet the Void is with us all the same. unified under our will. We have absolutely got this. Wow, I am doing incredibly here. Okay, we're fine. We got this. I haven't even gotten hit. There it is. Oh gosh. Don't chase me up too fast, Void. I spoke too soon, and now's the time where she is going to unleash her wrath upon me. Even in this fight, our Steel Soul run is not at risk, however. We have the power of gods behind us, and they have our back. Now all it takes is one last set of trials. The Radiance, you have put this entire world through far too much, and now it is your time. Our ultimate form of Void is revealed. Radiance, you deserve this. And we have done it. Embrace the Void, the most difficult achievement to attain, and I say that as an objective fact, and it feels amazing. That trial, I honestly don't think it's any understatement to say that it is the most difficult thing that I have personally ever achieved in any video game, and I do not say that lightly. I don't enjoy tooting my own horn like this, but I have been through the trenches of many other games that people say, that people attribute immense difficulty to, and I believe with my entire chest that Absolute Radiance at the top of all that is a bridge further. Honestly, just gutsy of them to make such an overwhelming challenge, but it also shows a great respect for their player base. The fact that they believe that we can do it. So here at the credits once more, I once again have to say, most emphatically, we are not quite done. There are a few achievements which still elude us, a few journal entries that we will have to work pretty hard for, but let's bask in the glow of this achievement. We have beaten everything. All I'm going to say now, before I leave you, is if you decided to take on this challenge yourself, if you found these videos and used them as a guide, I hope I helped. I hope that I played a part in your success. That would be the greatest fulfillment that I could ask for. I will see you in the next one.